7.7b homework continued. Alright, so we're going to find the product of 2x plus 2 times 6x cubed minus 5x squared plus 7x minus 4. Same concept as before, but now we're going to extend it further. So we are going to multiply this 2x, the first term within the first set of parentheses, by all 4 terms within the second set of parentheses. So we're saying 2x times 6x cubed. Now there's an implied or understood 1 wherever you don't see an exponent, so I'm just going to put those in. So we say 2x times 6x cubed. So 2 times 6 is 12. X to the first times x to the third is x to the fourth. Then we say 2x times negative 5x squared. So 2 times negative 5 is a negative 10. And x to the first times x to the second is x cubed because 1 plus 2 is 3. Then we say 2x times 7x. 2 times 7 is a 14. And x to the first times x to the first is x to the second. Then we distribute it to the fourth one, which is 2x times negative 4. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And we keep the x. Now that we're done distributing the first term in the first set of parentheses, now we have to distribute the second term in the first set of parentheses. So now we say 2 times 6x cubed. 2 times 6 is positive 12. And we just keep the x cubed. Then we say 2 times negative 5x squared. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. And we keep the x squared. Then we say 2 times positive 7x. 2 times 7 is 14. And we keep the x. And then we say 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Next step is we combine like terms. So it looks like we have a fourth term, which is the leading one. So we keep the 12x to the fourth. Then we have a negative 10x cubed. And over here we have a positive 12x cubed. And that gives me a negative 10x cubed plus positive 12x cubed gives me a positive 2x cubed. Then we have a positive 14x squared and a negative 10x squared. And positive 14x squared minus 10x squared is going to give me a positive 4x squared. And then finally we have a positive 8x, and we have, we have negative 8x, and we have a positive 14x. Negative 8 plus 14 is a positive 6, and we keep the x. And then finally we have a constant of minus 8 at the end. So we'll move on to the next one. And now we have 3 terms times 3 terms. So we have a trinomial, 3 terms, times a trinomial, 3 terms. Okay, so we're going to multiply 6x squared, or 6t squared, by 7t squared. So 6 times 7 is a 42. And t squared times t squared is t to the 4th power because 2 plus 2 is 4. Next we say 6t squared times 6t, and it's implied or understood first power. So we end up with 6 times 6 is a 36. And t squared times t to the first is t to the 3rd. Next we say 6t squared times negative 1 is negative 6t squared. And we're done distributing the first term into first term in the first set of parentheses by the second term within the second parentheses. And so now we're going to distribute the second term within the first set of parentheses. So we say negative t times positive 7t squared, and negative times positive is a negative. So you end up with a negative 7, and then t to the understood or implied first power, t to the first power times t to the second power is t to the 3rd power. Then we are going to say negative t times a positive 6t, so we know the answer is going to be a negative 6. And then we're going to say t to the first times t to the first is t to the second because 1 plus 1 is 2, or t times t is t squared. Then finally we end up with negative 4 times negative t times negative 1, which gives me a negative times the negative is a positive, and so we'll end up with a positive t. Then we're going to finally distribute the last term, the 3rd term over here, so it's negative 4, for instance, times 7t squared. So a negative times a positive is a negative. A 4 times a 7 is a 28. And finally, we're just going to keep the t squared. Next, we're saying negative 4 times positive 6t. So a negative 4 times a positive 6 is a negative 24, and we'll keep the t. And then finally, we say negative 4 times negative 1, which gives me a positive 4. So at this point, we're simply going to combine like terms. First term is a fourth power, so we're just going to keep it. Don't need to worry about that. Next, we have a 36t cubed and a negative 7t cubed. So a negative 36 plus a negative 7 would give me a negative 43t cubed. Next, we see a negative 6t squared and a negative 6t squared, which gives me a negative 12t squared. Next, we see that we have a positive t. Just back up a second. So we have a negative 6t squared, a negative 6t squared, and over here it looks like we have a negative 28t squared. So a negative 6 and a negative 6 is a negative 12, a negative 12 and a negative 28 is a negative 40t squared. Then finally we end up with the first power, so we have a t here, just a 1t, and over here we have a negative 24t, which would give us a negative, so we have a positive 1, and we have minus 23, or 24, which gives me negative 23t. And then finally, we have a constant there at the end, so we just tack back on the 4. All right, so next we're going to go into the next problem. So now we're just multiplying a binomial by binomial. Don't worry about FOIL. It just means first, outside, inside, last. So basically it would be this. First term times first term. Outside times outside would be first term times last term. Inside would be 8 times y in this case. And last would be 8 times 4, which if it occurs to you we've been doing that all along, you are correct. So FOIL is just a very specific instance of multiplying a binomial by a binomial, where I've been showing you just multiply the first term by everything in the second term by everything within the first, within the second term, second parentheses, and then if there's more, you just keep on going with this pattern, right? So regardless, you end up with y times y, which is y squared. You end up with y times 4, which is 4y. Then you end up with 8 times y, which is 8y. And then you end up with 8 times 4, which is 32. And now your two terms in the middle, they should be like terms, so you should be able to combine them. So you bring down your y squared. A 4y plus 8y is a 12y. And you just keep your 32. Okay, so now we have 5x times 3x, and 5 times 3 is 15, and x times x is x squared. Then we have 5x times negative 7y, so 5 times negative 7 is negative 35, and x times y is just xy. Then we have 2y times 3x, 2 times 3 is a 6, and x times y is xy. And then we have 2y times negative 7y, positive times a negative is a negative, and 2 times 7 is 14, and y times y is y squared. Now I reordered both of these to be xy just so you can see these are like terms. You can write them in alphabetical order. Okay, so then we keep the 15x squared, negative 35xy plus 6xy is negative 29xy, and we just keep the negative 14y squared. Down to the next one. So now we're saying 4x times 6x. 4 times 6 is 24. X times x is x squared. Next is 4 times 7 is 42. X times y is xy. Then we would say 5y times 6x. 5 times 6 is 30. And x times y, or y times x, is just xy. Then we would say 5y times 7y. 5 times 7 is a 35, and y times y is y squared. We have two like terms in the middle, So we'd say 24x squared, and 42 plus 30 is 72xy. Then we would just add in 35y squared at the end. Next, we move on to the next one. I'm going to distribute the x to the first set of parentheses first. So we say x times 3x is 3x squared. X times negative 4 is negative 4x. Put that in parentheses. And now we have to distribute that to the second one. So we say 3x times x is 3x squared. So that should have been x squared, sorry. That should be x times 3x is x squared, and x times negative 4 is negative 4x. All right, so we end up with 3x squared times x to the first. 2 plus 1 is 3. Then we say 3x squared times 8. 3 times 8 is a 24, and we keep the x squared. And we say negative 4x times x is negative 4x squared, because 1 plus 1 is 2. Then we say negative 4x times positive 8. Negative 4 times positive 8 is negative 32. And we keep the x. At this point, the last thing is we need to combine like terms. So we bring down our 3x cubed, and we say 24x squared minus 4x squared positive 20x squared, and we keep the negative 32x.